Hello everybody and welcome back to Full House Sports here, myself Charlie. A reminder before the video starts to please like, comment and subscribe. Anything you guys do is greatly appreciated as I try and become a one-man sports news bandwagon. Now many European football fans, especially those who take even a passive interest in South American football, were left stunned waking up this morning to hear the news that Filipe Luis, who for me and I think many others is one of the brightest young coaching prospects in the world, has been sacked from Flamengo as head coach. Luis, of course, won last year's Copa Libertadores and the Campeonato Brasileiro, the Serie A, or the top league in Brazil, and was averaging, in a stunning statistic, a trophy every 14 games. However, he was sacked last night despite an 8-0 win, which saw Flamengo reach the Rio de Janeiro State Cup final. So it's important to remember that it's the State Cup final, the Campeonato Carioca, beating their rivals Madeirense 11-0 on aggregate and 8-0 in that game. I think, like I say, many of us were left absolutely staggered by this and wondering what on earth is going on. There's a couple of things I think to factor in. I think, firstly, they've lost two big cup finals, Flamengo, and he said it himself, Luis, when he played at the club, that Flamengo as a club is probably the most demanding club in the world. Well, he knows that now. They lost the Recopa Sudamericana, which is equivalent to the UEFA Super Cup, to Lanús, who have won the Copa Sudamericana, which is the South American equivalent of the Europa League. They lost that final. They also lost the Brazilian Super Cup final to Corinthians. And I think there's a feeling perhaps at the club that, you know, what on earth is going on here and why are we losing finals? This isn't what Filipe does. But I think secondly, and perhaps I'm being inferring too much here, I think secondly, a very important factor in this is Flamengo have spent big and have started the league poorly. From 3 games, they're on 4 points. They've won 1, drew 1 and lost 1. They, of course, have spent a lot of money on players, including, we all know in England, Lucas Paqueta. They spent 50 million. Now, I did a video on the channel before talking how I think Flamengo have got all the framework to become a real super club, in terms of the new stadium, in terms of the investment on the pitch, in terms of the trophies and the global marketability. But with that comes an amount of pressure, similar, I guess, to what we see in Europe with clubs like Real Madrid, where you look and you go, oh, they've sacked, Alonso, for example, was sacked this season. Everyone sort of went, oh, I don't really get why they've done that. But that's the demands of these clubs and these clubs' hierarchies, who, the president of Flamengo is 65 years old, BAP, as he's affectionately known. He's a very demanding character. He's an interesting character. He will have looked at this and gone, if I've invested heavily, I want instant results. One thing I think to take away from this is I think there'll be a fair few managers in Europe that will be looking and probably quite nervous. I would be if I was them. Luis is, like I say, one of the best managers in my eyes in the world, young managers. He was absolutely fantastic all season for Flamengo. Like I say, culminated in those 2 trophies, beating Palmeiras in the final in Peru and in the Copa Libertadores, that is. And I think he's really going to be looking. Of course, he had a career at Atletico and Chelsea, as we remember him in England. He's probably going to be looking at a few clubs now and thinking, could I go there? He's managed at a huge club anyway. Despite the fact that sometimes as European football fans, we turn our nose up a bit at South American football, they are massive clubs with huge demands. And he's got that experience in his locker. He will be looking, I think, at this continent and saying, yeah, I fancy my chances. I want to have a crack at that. Of course, we saw this, though, a few years ago with Marcelo Gallardo, and it never materialised. I hope, for Luis's sake, for European football's sake, it does this time around. As always, guys, let us know what you think. Please like, comment and subscribe. Anything you guys do is greatly appreciated as I try and become a one-man sports news bandwagon. Have a great day.